Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. This is part 2 of our Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum. My name is Nikele Gregor Karai, Technical Specialist with ICA's Climate Action and Sustainable Agriculture Program. And today we bring to you our second forum on techniques for creating high quality compost in an effort. Apologies there. Today our session is actually efficient locust irrigation and water saving techniques. Sorry there for the edit error there. And we have with us Mr. Bradbury Brown. Before we start, I would like everybody to keep their mics on mute. I know sometimes by error we unmute, so just be mindful of that. So today we have with us Mr. Bradbury Brown from Cadiz, Antigua. Key objectives of this forum is to raise awareness and to share knowledge of climate-smart agriculture practices and various options for the region. We seek to build a community of interested and engaged actors at a regional and national level, and we share this forum with ICA's 13 English-speaking member states. We have from Antigua, Bahamas, Barbados, Suriname, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis. We also have St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. So there should be quite a range of persons across the region here today. And so we're looking to build that sort of community of interested persons. We're also seeking to promote enhanced coordination and collaboration among you, the stakeholders across the region as it relates to agriculture, activities and programs within the agriculture sector to build the climate resilience in the region. And more so, we also look to link technical knowledge to practical actions on the ground. So this forum is not about just coming in, getting the knowledge and leaving, and that's the end of it. The key thing there for us is we want that knowledge to translate into action on the ground. And so today, as I said, we have Mr. Brown with us. He's a senior agriculture technician in irrigation, agronomy, and seed production with Cadiz, Antigua, and Barbuda. But today, our focus will be on irrigation and water saving techniques. Mr. Brown has a wealth of knowledge in the area of irrigation, dealing with drought condition. As most of us will know, Antigua is a very dry country with a lot of water issues and access to water, and therefore he has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience that he will share with you today. So without any further ado, I present to you Mr. Brown, who will discuss with you, after which we will go into the question and answer section. So please, you could unmute your mic when we reach that session and you could speak, or you could type your questions in the chat, whichever you choose comfortable with. Mr. Brown, over to you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. First of all, let me thank ICA for the invitation to present at this forum. Give me a second so I can share my screen.
So while Mr. Bradbury is sharing his screen, I have posted on the screen, you should see on your screen 2 questions. If you could just take a few seconds to answer this poll. So it will be on your screen and you just select the answer you feel pertains to you currently.
Yes, good morning again, everybody. Now, with the effects of climate change that is currently affecting our member states, and with the recent COVID and supply chain disruption, we find ourselves in a situation where production at the local level has to be increased, but we still have a lot of challenges. We have climate change issues. We have most severe drought throughout the Caribbean. We have sea rise. We have saltwater intrusion in our aquifers. So it is very important that we start to do things a bit different in terms of irrigation, rainwater harvesting, conservation, etc. So basically, we have several types of irrigation that we practice within the region. There's sprinkler irrigation, furrow irrigation. That's for countries that have a lot of water, subsurface irrigation, and drip irrigation. One of the most important things that you have to take into consideration when you're planning irrigation installation is to know your terrain. If you have flatlands, if you have gentle slope, if you have steep slopes, because all this would come into consideration when you're designing your irrigation systems, where your source of water is and where you plan to pump the water to. Another key component is the distance from the water source would determine the size pipes that you use for delivery from your pumping system. Other component is know your soils, because this has a lot to do with how much water that you would need to apply based on.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown.
Hello?
Ms. Henry from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm here with about 18 farmers from Agriculture Region 1, and they indicated that you are going a bit too fast.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, would you be able to share your video as well? Your video? Thanks.
If what?
Would you be able to share your video?
Yes.
Yes. Your camera, sir. Yeah. So they see who's presenting. Thanks.
Okay. The reason why I was kind of going fast was I have a time limit, and there's a lot of information to cover. Sorry about that. So as I was saying previously, you have to know the soil type that you're dealing with so that you can manage your scarce water resources. Now, this question comes up all the time as to when is the best time to irrigate. The best time to irrigate is actually early mornings, but sometimes it's not really possible for that to happen. But it's the best time to irrigate, like anything from 5 a.m. to about 8, 9, 10 a.m. before the sun gets to its highest. The evening is also the best time to irrigate, but what happens when you irrigate in the evenings? It creates a situation where you can have fungal growth higher. And irrigating early in the mornings keep the soil cool and moist during the hottest periods of the day. Another important aspect to consider is you need to know the crop that you're growing and the crop water requirements so that you can schedule your irrigation cycles at the appropriate time so that you maximize on your irrigation schedules. So for example, when you just transplant or you just sow the seeds, at that stage of the crop does not require the large amounts of water that you would need later on in the crop production. Now there are some tools that we can use to measure the moisture that is available in the soil so that we can schedule our irrigation by information and not by guessing. So this one is basically a tensiometer. What this does is measure the amount of available moisture that is available to the plant at any one particular time. So it reads and gives you information. So once you go in the field and you check the tensiometer and you see based on the reading, like this one is showing wet. So you don't necessarily have to irrigate. Then you would see dry, wet. Now, if you have this instrument installed in your fields, when it reaches 50, it's an indication that the moisture levels are getting low. So then is when you need to irrigate and bring the moisture content back up to field capacity. This is also another instrument that a cheap one that can be bought. It's a soil moisture probe that you just stick in the soil and it will give you a reading. This is another one, a cheap one, because we're trying to find affordable equipment that we can use to monitor the moisture in our soils. Now, for those of us who have to do a lot of cost of production, this is another useful equipment. This is a water meter so that you can actually measure the amount of water that you apply to your crop, and you can get a costing for it as well. So when you're doing your cost of production to see what is your cost of production for a particular crop, this is also very useful. Now, before the seminar, we got a lot of questions from individuals in terms of drawings for appropriate irrigation systems, field systems. So these are the next couple of slides which show you drawings of irrigation systems. Most of them would be designed in terms of using tanks, small water catchments to do either gravity feeding or in some instances solar pumping. Now this one shows a tank on a platform which is basically gravity feeding, and as you can see from the top, it's capable of irrigating small areas. This is another one that we would be implementing in another project, which you have a structure that does the rainwater harvesting, a solar pump that would pump the water to your farm, your holdings. And these are not expensive systems that you have to implement. This is a tank that is on a platform. This was constructed to assist ECO with the EBA project with the vetiver grass. And we was doing it in an isolated location. So this is on a platform and it's 100% gravity feeding. Now, a lot of us in the region, when we start to think about rainwater harvesting, water for irrigation, and so a lot of us start to think about building ponds, dams, etc. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. There are some systems that you can implement for short-term use, even long-term use. They have tanks that, like in this 40 AC3 tanks, they can be connected to each other, and then depending on the distance you have to go, a pump can be installed at the end, or you can do gravity feeding. And we also have some situations where we have backyard gardeners, small holdings that you cannot afford to purchase these large tanks. There's simple things that you can use, small containers that you can use to develop a system. Then I know most of us in the region have relatives and friends overseas, and we get a lot of these borrowings come to us from time to time. Even if we don't get it, other people get it. And we have a lot of these borrowers as they're sitting down. They can be turned into something useful in terms of putting 3, 4, 6, 8 of them together, putting pipes attached to them so that you can get a system to collect your rainwater and use it for irrigation purposes. Now, in this modern day and age, a lot of us don't have the time to go to our holdings and irrigate. Sometimes it's just to irrigate alone. It takes time depending on where your situation is. But there's some tools that can help you. This is an automated water timer. It's can be available. I think I got this one from Amazon. Costs about 40 US. And you can actually schedule your irrigation cycles based on this. It works with battery, so it can be in remote locations. And for example, if you schedule to irrigate 3 days a week, you can set it at that. If you want to irrigate for 5 minutes, every irrigation cycle, it's capable of doing that. It's very useful. So the time that you would spend to drive, go out to your farm just to turn on the water and wait, this could do the work for you while you have other things doing. One of the things that we also have to take into consideration when designing irrigation systems is our filtration system. This photo is a filtration system of a farmer that has a larger holdings, but he didn't have a good filtration system. So you find out when you pump in the water from the dam, every 3-4 hours he has to go and clean this filter because they really get clogged up with sediments, algae, whatever. So in consultation with the farmer, we now implemented this. This is a gravity type filters with gravel, and it does a lot of good filtration. So it makes his system now become more efficient and more effective for him. So rather than him now having to go clean the filters every 2-3 hours, this one can provide the same system, and it also has the capability to do back flushing. So once it collects all the inert material, the algae, particles that would clog up the drip irrigation systems, this would take care of it. But this one is for like large holdings that you're pumping from a dam, a river, or whatever. But you also have to take into consideration small holdings as well, and they have smaller filters that would do the job for you. This one is on a farm that we did with ICA in collaboration with Cardi with the crowdfunding project. And this farmer was pumping from a dam. As you can see, the small concrete structure, there's an irrigation pump in there. And this filter filters the water. It's a 2-inch, this filter does a very good job. The only drawback with this one, you have to monitor it and clean it a bit more often, maybe every 2-3 weeks, depending on the sediments that get accumulated in the filter. This one is from the same filter that you saw previously, but there's a primary filter and a secondary filter. If you notice in the slide, you have the secondary filter, which is a small black one, and then the water meter. What this does, it filters the solution from the tank for the fertigation. So this will take care of all the small particles, some of the sediments from the fertilizer, the inert material. And when it goes through the drip system, you will now get practically clean sediment-free water. But from time to time, you have to clean it so that it becomes more efficient. Because what we're trying to do is to provide efficient systems so that the farmer or the backyard gardener or whoever has less technical work to do so that they can concentrate on more production. And this is the setup with the Venturi injector that applies the fertilizer through the irrigation systems, which makes your operation more efficient. So instead of you now having to go and apply fertilizer by hand, etc., etc., you can now apply it through the injector system. Now, some of the things that we practice in Antigua is to grow a lot of cover crops to conserve whatever moisture is there, whether you apply it yourself or by rainfall. So this is basically a sweet potato crop. It was established under drip irrigation, and once it's fully established, you will conserve a lot of moisture. So you will eliminate having to irrigate as often as possible. Because prior to 2010, nobody in Antigua irrigated sweet potato. But after we did a lot of work and showed them the cost benefit between irrigation and non-irrigation of root crops, almost everybody in Antigua now plants sweet potato and to a lesser extent cassava with drip irrigation. Now, this is an interesting photo. We have a coconut project ongoing in Antigua, and this was a nursery that was established. You can see the nuts, the irrigation system, and the moisture from the irrigation. But irrigation by itself is not going to provide all the answers. So we had now to implement a mulching system. For this one, what we did was just apply grass mulch. So this is now a recent photo of the plot with the grass mulch. So in a lot of instances, we have to also implement techniques to conserve the moisture that we put down. We have to do it in Antigua because we're very dry. So we use basically two types of mulch: grass mulch where available.
Okay. You have any rambutan?
And plastic mulch. Now this photo shows irrigation system that was set up for coconut production. It's a bit different than the ones that you would use for vegetable crops. This one is so flexible that it's a blank line with the green emitter that you can install in the root zone of food trees. So this one is good for food trees. And we had installed this on a government farm that was propagating coconuts. So we have the drip line and the emitters were installed in the root zone. As the trees get bigger, you can now expand and put the emitters where the roots are for the moisture that you put down. Now in Antigua, we practice a lot of plastic mulch and T-tape. Fortunately for us, we have equipment. So from this photo, you can see the tractor with the mulcher, and it has the T-tape, so everything can go down at the same time. I know a lot of you in the Windward Islands are not accustomed to this, but it can also be installed by hand. We see the guys now using the plastic mulch. The T-tape is already on the bank, and you can do this manually. It takes quite a bit of time and experience, but if you don't have the tractor services to do it, you can now do it by hand. Now with the plastic mulch, it is affordable in the sense that I think one roll of plastic mulch with about 4 mil is about 8,000 feet on it, and it costs about 800 EC. So you can actually mulch an acre with one roll easily. This is the tractor applying the mulch. And what we do in Antigua a lot is plastic mulch, the irrigation, the fertigation, but it also gives us the flexibility to grow more than one crop in the mulch, because we practice a lot of minimum tillage to conserve whatever moisture there is. So sometimes we can get 3-4 crops out of one mulch application. This is a field of hot peppers that we established about a week ago. And we're very big on hot pepper seed production. And knowing our situation in terms of moisture and water, we have to do this because we run in the pepper plot in some instances for 9 months. And invariably, the crop would be grown in a lot of drought periods. So this gives us our key advantage in terms of managing the crop. It also provides a lot of cover for weeds. So rather than now we have to be weeding the whole plot, we just control the furrows. Sometimes it's just basically hand weeding, in some instances, chemical application with herbicide. And this also reduces your cost of production in terms of labor and labor costs. Now, this is a very interesting photo. On one of our trips to Barbuda, we met with this farmer that plants peanuts. But because Barbuda is so dry, the farmer was unable to plant more than one crop of peanuts a year. So normally he would plant peanuts in September. That is when traditional rain season. But after our intervention with applying him with this irrigation system, the farmer can now plant 2 crops of peanut a year. So sometimes it's just a small intervention that can change things for you. So you now can, because in Barbuda, they have a lot of underground water. It's just that sometimes when it gets real dry, the water quality is not all that good because of the saline content, but you can still produce. So this shows you just small interventions in terms of irrigation system can help in your production system. Now, as I said before, at CADI in Antigua, we practice a lot of crop rotation. So sometimes we get 3-4 crops out of one plastic mulch application. So that means sometimes we have crops growing in a particular area, different crops for almost 12 to 18 months without replowing, that sort of thing, which is beneficial. So sometimes we have, this is the same plot, we have corn. Previous to that, we had hot peppers, then we had cucurbits. So once you have the mulch, it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of planting other crops. Now this is another plot that we have with sweet potato intercrop with cassava. I know a lot of you in the islands that have a lot of water would be surprised that we plant in cassava and sweet potato with irrigation. But in order to maximize our situation in terms of food security, we have to do this. And then it becoming more prevalent in other Caribbean countries that are water rich. We have times of the year, mid-January to sometimes May, is when we have a lot of drought conditions and we still need to grow. So these are some of the techniques that you can implement in terms of intercropping, planting other crops for food production and income generation. This is a photo of some plantings that we established at the field station in Antigua, utilizing the same irrigation system where we use a blank line and install the emitters in the wood zone so that you don't have water wasting between the trees. Now, a lot of us in the region, when we talk about irrigation, we only study about irrigation for crops, but we still have the livestock sector to deal with. Some farmers are livestock farmers, and drought conditions affect animals way more seriously than crops, because once there are no available animal feed, you either have to slaughter the animals or they would die. So what we did, we established a plot of mulberry, and it's under irrigation. So you can come and cut feed your animals. This is a plot that we did in collaboration with ECA as well. So you see, we have the gliricidia, the mulberry, the African star grass, guinea grass. So you have it being irrigated. So in the dry, hot weather periods, you can still produce animal feed, which is affordable, and you can maintain your livestock until such times that the rain comes to give you relief in terms of forages. This is another photo of the same irrigation system, irrigating yams, banana, cassava. Now, one of the questions that was asked when the forum was advertised is what to do with recycled water bottles. We have a system here in Antigua that was introduced by CARI representative Paul Lucas in terms of utilizing the water bottles to grow vegetables. So what this is, take the large water bottles, cut it in two. The top section we fill with soil, and we have a wick system that goes into the bottom section that is filled with water. And as you can see, we have good production of lettuce, pak choy, wherever you want to go. And it's a means of using the recycled bottles. So a lot of these bottles don't go to the landfill and create another problem for us. This is another photo of it, where another section where we painted the bottles black so that it deflects the direct sunlight and a lot of evapotranspiration don't take place as fast. So the amount of water that you put in, and then you can also mix your fertilizer in the water so that it provides the nutrients. So this is a unique way of utilizing and recycling the water bottles. So for us, other persons that have small backyards and you don't have the space that you think you have to build raised beds and boxes and stuff, all you need is just the soil and your seeds, and you can grow crops this way. But we also implemented a subsurface irrigation system where in the dry months when you have fruit trees, the fruit trees still need water, but there's no rain coming. So again, Paul being the water specialist here, we devised this clay pot subsurface system where we got some clay pots made, we fill them with water and install them in the ground, and the water slowly releases and provide moisture for the trees. Now, if you notice in this photo, as I said earlier, when you're installing them, you need to know the topography of land. So this one, it's down a gentle slope. So we will put it at the top of the slope so that when the water filters through the pot, it filters down into the root zone. We also have a system where we use the same water bottles to irrigate the fruit trees. So we would fill the water bottles, punch small holes at the bottom, and over time it provides moisture. Sometimes when you want to get more moisture coming out of the bottles, all you do is just open the cover and the water would come out a bit faster. And we also have this technique where we put stones around the roots that would provide moisture retention, things of that nature. So this is also a good way of utilizing the water bottles for recycling. So all you have to do is fill them and leave them. So your food trees would now become productive if you're depending on your food trees for even your personal home use or for revenue generation, especially in the dry months. I know a lot of us don't spend time on irrigating food trees when it's dry because we're utilizing the water for our vegetable crops, but the food trees still need to be productive. This is another photo of the water bottle and the food tree. And all these trees were planted in extreme drought conditions. Right now, they're very productive. Now, one of the questions that were asked was costs for irrigation equipment, costs for its installation. This is just a basic cost for irrigation equipment. This is just for the irrigation equipment alone for 1 acre land. It's the T-tape, the submain, the connectors, the filter, and the venturi. So the other costs that would be involved in this would basically be dependent on the distance from your irrigation setup to your pumping. If it's gravity feed, you use the tank, you need to get the other PVC pipes, etc., etc. I would not know the cost for those depending on your location. Another question that was asked is suppliers. Our main supplier for drip irrigation material is Jamaica Drip. They provide a lot of drip irrigation material, technical advice, you name it. Then there's a negotiation going on between Jamaica Drip and some people in Antigua to establish an agency in Antigua where they would probably service the OECS, which would be a lot more affordable for people in the region rather than having to ship out to Jamaica. And the material will be easily accessible. I don't know what the situation is, especially in the OECS in terms of suppliers providing drip irrigation material, stuff like that. But this is it. So that's the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Brad, for that. Quite a bit of experience is there, quite a bit of information on some of the various techniques to save water, because sometimes we tend to think that, you know, the irrigation systems is going to cost you money, but the irrigation system allows you to produce year-round, which brings in greater income and covers the cost of that irrigation system. We do so far have a bit of questions. So participants, you can raise your hand and open your mic to ask your questions, or you could also type in your question, but it would be good to get that interaction. It's an open session, do not feel shy. The session is for you. You selected that topic you were interested in, so this is your opportunity to get some answers for your questions, share some of your experiences. Mr. Leon Richardson, your hand has been up for quite some time. Apologies. The questions, we do have this open dialogue to take the questions, so you can go ahead and ask your question now. You are on mute, so unmute your mic. You are muted, Mr. Richardson.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize my hand was up all the time. Am I sorry for that?
Okay.
Am I mute?
Yes, Leon, you could go ahead.
I know I got a technical glitch. I can navigate away on the screen.
I could not hear you clearly.
I said that I think that may be a little technical glitch. I touched something wrongly, trying to navigate my way, seeing how to get.
Okay,
So,
no problem.
I'm sitting listening, and when there's another time, I have to.
Okay, no problem. So we will take you, Mr. Arnold.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I was following most of the presentation and I liked how it progressed, given lots more details as in the beginning is about slope and possibly current capacity and so on. But what was really that caught my attention, because I'm a rural development specialist, I was looking at the technology that my colleague Lucas had developed with the use of the plastic bottles. And I'm very happy to say that I like it, and it can be adapted to vertical gardens, especially in the urban areas whereby there are space limitations. For those, Mr. Lucas, and I am very happy to be able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. And definitely, yes, particularly for persons with the limited space in the city areas. I mean, it's always good to grow a little of your own vegetables. Now, these things tend to be quite costly, you know, having your own little kitchen garden, they become quite useful there. Mr. George Emmanuel, you could go ahead.
Thank you very much, Nikelia. Good morning to everybody. Brad, thank you very much for the presentation. I have not seen you for a little while. I really did enjoy the presentation as well, Brad. We know that's your forte. We always look forward to you doing our irrigation and our drainage system. So interestingly enough, I wanted to ask you, because we do plastic mulching as well, based on your recommendations, in fact. But do you have challenges with soil compaction? Specifically because we recycle the area in which we do the mulching. Sometimes we use it over a year period, 2 years period, and we recycle crops there. So that is basically a question I would like to find out if you really, and of course the soil compaction is based on soil types and all of those kind of things, but do you see it as a challenge though, the soil compaction? Secondly, the mulch itself, when it is no longer usable, because over time it deteriorates and it becomes not quite usable, it always has a lot of holes and that sort of a thing. We have not found those which are readily biodegradable or really can be biodegradable within a short period of time, and that can form maybe even part of a compost pile. So that there is another challenge that I would like you to speak to a little bit in terms of disposal of the mulch and its non-biodegradable aspect. And finally, well, your last few slides, you spoke a lot about Paul's kind of interventions, his ideas in interventions. I know we had spoken about it a long time ago, really, but in terms of large-scale production, how feasible it is to actually use this type of system for large-scale production, the use of the bottles. I mean, we work with hundreds of acres and not just a small backyard. Thank you, Brad.
Okay, first response was the compaction. What we try to do is get the land preparation done properly from the inception. So what we do with first cut, second cut, bank, rotivate, and then apply the mulch and the T-tail. But because of our soil type, it is not a problem because the only moisture that would go towards the soil that would probably create any sort of compaction or anything is if we have heavy showers and majority of the soil is covered. So what you will have is filtration taking place from the water that settles in the ground. So we don't have a problem with compaction. The next question was the mulch. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to source no mulch that is biodegradable. And if we check plastic basically take 1,000 years to biodegrade. So you know that's not happening no time soon. However, there are two methods we use. There's a mulch remover that you can remove the mulch and then dispose of it properly. And it can be removed by hand for your next land preparation. So that eliminates the tractor plowing the mulch in the soil and creating another problem. The last one with the water bottles that Paul implemented, that is basically geared for small operations. It was not intended for no large operations in terms of hundreds of acres, right? The irrigation system would be more applicable for large acreages, and there are systems that are capable of irrigating food trees and vegetable crops. So in a nutshell, that's basically the answer, George.
Thanks there, Brad. In terms, I'll just take a question from the chat. Quite a bit of persons are asking in terms of painting the water bottles, why black and not white? Because normally when we hear black, we're saying that it becomes a bit more hot. So persons questioning why black and not white.
Now, if you notice, we have black plastic mulch. Now, if you know the rationale between black and white attracts heat and black deflects the heat. So instead of the heat coming into the water and creating a high rate of evapotranspiration, the black reflects the heat. Whereas in colder countries, they use white mesh, white plastic mulch to attract the heat, to provide heat for the plants when they grow. So that's the difference between the black and the white. I know we have this misconception, black and white and heat and so, but it's the opposite. The black deflects the heat and the white attracts the heat.
Great. Lionel, we'll take your question. Are you there with us? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, pleasant good day. This is Lionel from Tropi Mulch Limited down in Trinidad and Tobago. Greetings to my Caribbean brothers. A few comments I want to make this morning. One of them was already touched by the previous gentleman on the degradation of the plastic mulch and that being not biodegradable. Second item I'm looking at, and I'm speaking from our experience with wood mulch for the last 12 years. Is there any research with the plastic mulch as to the increase in soil temperature because black absorbs radiation? I'm a physicist and chemist as well, and black absorbs radiation, white reflects all visible radiation. So your soil temperature is going to increase. What we noticed with our wood mulch uncolored and the lighter colored ones would, on average, would get a reduction in soil temperature with a 4-inch depth of mulch of approximately 8 degrees on average. And we're seeing with that drop in temperature, the water which you have won by whatever recycling method you use is more available for your xylem bundles in your plant. You're not going to lose any by evaporation. We're seeing on average over the last 12 years, we've worked a lot of people within the country here who are into organic gardening and such. And we're seeing on average data showing us about 20% reduction in watering. So they're saving that amount of water. And in addition to that, we also getting into some research with a private customer in the East, where they're looking at the reflection of light, more light onto the plant with a lighter colored mulch actually boosting production. That's a new research we're into with a customer presently. So I would like to ask our esteemed presenter if there's any data with the plastic mulch as to how much it increases the soil temperature by, and if that would affect the evaporation of the water which has been won, and it goes back into the system and not into the plant. And one last comment I would like to make. In Trinidad now, we are suffering greatly because of lack of foreign exchange and the supply chain. And I'm seeing in a lot of the agricultural techniques that we want to adopt, I don't know why we're doing that, but in some cases it may be unavoidable. What I'm seeing is we're incorporating a lot of outside variables, which will make us dependent on the outside world, and then to take our valuable foreign exchange and give to them. And I'm seeing it's possible, it's happening within our own confines here, where people are actually taking what we have in hand and we are creating solutions to the problems that are before us, so that we become less dependent on the outside world and less dependent on losing that valuable foreign exchange we may have. We may want to keep it for something more important, medicines or whatever. So that's my contribution, and I thank you very much again for being here this morning and allowing me that privilege of making this statement. Thank you again. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Lionel. You could go ahead, Bryce.
Well, firstly, to answer the question about the mulch and the heat and stuff generated. The best mulch to use in the first instance is organic, whether grass, wood chippings, whatever. But because of our dry conditions in Antigua, and I think it was in the 90s, we had some Israeli specialists. And if we have to track back, drip irrigation, plastic mulch, fertigation was invented in Israel. So a lot of the technology that we use in Antigua was adopted from that. In all honesty, we have never done no actual research in terms of collecting data in terms of the temperature and whatever. But in Antigua's situation, we don't have a problem in terms of the temperature rising to no excessive amounts. As a matter of fact, in a lot of instances, when we test the temperature beneath the mulch, it is fine. It is not hot. So whatever moisture we apply under the mulch, it stays there 3, 4, 5 days. And then we have the tensiometers installed so that we can understand the moisture probes that we can test. Now, some of the moisture probes have the capability to test the temperature as well as the moisture. So individuals that have reservations in terms of whether on the day is too hot or whatever, they can test it for themselves. Then I agree with him in terms of, because of certain situations, we are forced to adopt a lot of outside technology where the raw material is coming from outside. So at some point, we have to get together as a region and see how best we can produce our own raw material.
Okay, thanks, Brad. So I will take a question from the chat. Someone was asking if you could explain again the plastic bottle irrigation. And also one asked that, well, yes, the clay pots will need to have holes at the base. So maybe you could explain exactly where it is at the base, at the sides, and the size of the holes.
Okay. First one is the one with the vegetables, with the wick system. As I said previously, Paul introduced that technology. That is not geared for no large holdings, no large operation. That is just for small to utilize the bottle. So the wick system is you cut off the top of the, fill it with soil, turn it upside down so that the area where the cork is now the receptor. So you put the wick in the soil and have the wick in the water. That's one method. The other method with the plastic bottles in the subsurface is you punch small holes in the bottom of the bottle so that the water seeps out over time and is available to the plants. With the clay pot, because the material is basically porous clay, over time, the water just seeps out, goes into the soil, and it's there. So there's no need to bore no holes, not punch no holes in the clay pot. I don't know if that answers the person's question.
Okay, great. We will now take Miss JH. You could go ahead. You're on mute. You're still muted. Try unmuting your mic.
Okay.
Okay, good. Go ahead. How do you pronounce your surname?
Alonso.
Yeah, that's Surinamese.
Yes.
That's Dutch. Okay, welcome. Go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Brad. I entered a little bit late, so that's why I heard you said something about cutting the plastic bottles in two, and then you put the earth in the top part, no, of the bottle, and then the other part you use to put water for the crop to be able to take water out of it. Is that what, did I understood it well?
Yeah, but between the soil and the water is a wick. You know, like, yeah, it's a cotton material. I don't know if some of us that old enough that we have lamps and stuff like that, that you have the wick that you would light and the fuel would be absorbed by the fuel. It's the same system. So there's a wick, which is a cotton material that you put between the soil and the water, and it gets moist and translocate up and provide moisture to the soil all the time.
Yeah, Brad, the wick is a similar system in which you use the wet bulb thermometer and dry bulb thermometer in a Stevenson screen. So the water is moved along the wick into the area which is dry.
Okay, I don't understand that yet. Well, I don't know what a wick is,
yeah, what we will probably try to do is send you a better picture that shows the whole schematic of it. Okay.
Okay. Good.
If we could just, before we move out of the mulching, Jenny, if you want to come in there to add anything, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, colleagues, good day. I just wanted to add on the mulching because there are a lot of things about it that, again, maybe we look at it very simply, but it's a little bit more complicated. I would agree that the issue of white and silver mulches, they do reflect more light, and the black mulches tend to absorb light. Also red mulches as well, they tend to absorb light. However, one of the things that we have to also be concerned, the issue is not just the issue of whether the soil temperature increases. You have to answer this: does it increase to a level that may be detrimental to some of the processes? That's number one. And does it increase to a point where you have a dry increase in temperature, meaning that the humidity or the moisture level is lower? That is where you become more concerned, etc. And luckily, the black and red does not do that. In terms of the soil temperature may increase, it is dependent on the type of soil that you have. For example, the difference between mulching in sandy soils versus clay soils in terms of the entire properties, how much moisture could be held in the soil and how quickly they actually heat up. That is a question. So for example, there have been studies that would have been done and clearly showed, particularly from the University of Florida, even some works that were done by Cardi in the earlier on, that you are seeing an increase in the temperature for red and also black mulch. That temperature, however, and for example, the white and the silver mulch, you are seeing a greater reflection of the light. However, the yield and the earlier to market resulted under the red mulch. And so even if there was an increase in the temperature for the red mulch and the black mulch, you're seeing the issue of earlier to market and productivity being higher under the red mulch. There's a reason for that, because with the mulching, you're not only concerned, like I said, with pure heat, you're concerned with the ratio between what we call the far red versus heat relative to the red light. And that also has an effect on the plant and how it grows and how it performs as well. And so just bear that in mind. Actually, there are some mulches that take advantage of mixing both the white and the black in different layers, etc., so that you have a little benefit of both of them. And so that I just wanted to bring that to the table, that when we are looking at the issue of rising temperature, it has to be contextual. And we also have to ask the question, does that increase particularly under the tropical environment or the specific soil, whether it is injurious to the processes that will allow for availability of nutrients, etc. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Johnny, for adding some added clarification there and some of the research that has been done in the areas of the mulch and the colors of the mulch. And thanks, Audra. Audra has placed a link in the chat that shows what the WIC system is for some of the persons that would have been asking. Jackson, you can go ahead for us to take your question.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just listen to the presentation as it relates to moisture retention and for the benefit of farmers. I didn't hear anything pertaining to the use of things such as compost to help with moisture retention within the soil and to add to soil structure and things of that sort. So I think that kind of raised a little eyebrow there. For me in that sense, if we are looking at the whole aspect of water retention and the whole soil structure, and it means everything water. The other issue has to do with you mentioned something about tensionometer, but I know for the bulk or the majority of farmers, there are some indigenous knowledge as it relates to this to deciding when the soil is lacking in terms of moisture content. I don't know how much work would have done in that area, so at least a farmer can take a sample of soil and maybe look at it in his hand between its finger, and you could tell whether or not the soil is dry or it's have adequate amount of water. The other important issue I didn't hear anything mentioned about, because the topic is low cost irrigation system and increased productivity, has to do with the quantity of water in a particular area and for a particular crop. I didn't hear much information about that, because I think that is something that is very important for majority of farmers. I see have pictures with tanks, how many gallons of water it would have taken to carry a crop to its productivity, to its stage of maturity. Thing of that sort. So I think that's something that can be looked into inside of it. And the important issue has to do with the whole aspect of the return to gallon of water used, in terms of its marginality, in terms of for every gallon of water that it would have been used, what is the actual yield you're getting inside of it. So that those are my major concern or comments I have to make itself.
Thanks, Jackson. Brad, you want to address any of them? And Chinny, if you want to come in after to add anything on those comments. Thanks.
Well, firstly, based on the subject areas that I was asked to present on, we did not add the traditional knowledge because I would have probably, I may be wrong in terms of assuming that almost everybody know how to test the moisture in the soil and everything by hand and feel the textures. All I was just attempting to do was to show people that there are other methods that can assist you in terms of knowing what the soil moisture content is. And then early in the presentation, I had mentioned about crop type, crop water requirements, and stuff like that. So What I know for a fact that we did some studies with sweet potato in terms of irrigation and non-irrigation. And the results are tremendous. You're making twice your yield. As a matter of fact, it's twice as high as the non-irrigated. That translates into profit. And everybody that's growing crops, the main focus is how much money I can make if I make this intervention in terms of applying water at the critical times for the increase in production. So Chani, if you have anything else to add, feel free.
Yeah, colleagues, I was trying to get this sense of, I mean, all of the issues that the last persons raised, they are relevant. Some of the issues that I raised, obviously we could always, through subsequent things like that, have a greater discussion. One of the things I think we have to be very clear about is that although some of the things were presented here and some of them are very simple, the issue of water management and not the issue of irrigation alone is something that requires a lot of technical experience and also consultation here. And so particularly if you're looking at it from the farm level, that as a key message I want us to leave with, all of the issue in terms of the cost, in terms of more specifically, not just the cost, the issue of the cost per drop of water, which is how do you now rationalize that? It's a good thing to have irrigation and have a low cost thing, but is it translating into how much does it cost you per pound of produce is another thing that if you're in that for a business, you have to calculate and really substantiate whether this is a low cost system for irrigation. The issue of even the use of amendments, like some of the things that the composting I heard other persons mention there, and the role it has to play in terms of water retention or improving the structure, that also must be placed there. I just wanted to leave by saying this, at least that discussion here. Although we are presenting on the issue of irrigation here, the issue of irrigation is not standalone. It has to be looked at in a broader context of water and soil management actually here. And so these are some of the things that obviously we cannot cover everything here, but at least to point you in the direction as to the mindset, as to these are some of the things that you would have to be concerned with. These are some of the things that are available now. And so these are the things that you also could share your experience so that we could learn from as we move forward. I will jump in there at other moments in the call, but I would very much like to hear the contributions from other persons as well. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Chani. And even in terms of, the role that composting plays, our last session was on composting. It would have gone in more detail. This session is pretty short, and obviously we definitely cannot cover everything. And so we will look in, for subsequent sessions, and that is where your questions, your comments are quite valuable. Sharon, you can go ahead.
Hello, my name is Victoria Barkley and I'm from St. Kitts, and I have an organic farm, and I'm really interested in the information you were sharing about how to preserve the fruit trees on this hot weather. Now, I saw the bottles, but I didn't see a clear picture of how those bottles were placed around the trunk of the tree. But do you mulch it first and then place the bottles around the trunk of the tree? And then with them, you using the bottles in the flower pots, how is that done as well? I mean, I just couldn't see the picture too closely so that I could really gauge how to do that. So I understood what you said about placing the bottles in the soil and cutting the holes in it and things like that. But I want to know more about the technique. Do you need to put the mulch around your trees, the trunks of your trees? And how do you use these bottles in the flower pots?
Okay, so firstly, with the fruit trees, what we try to do is when the grass is available, we mulch around the root zone, around the trunk, and as wide as possible. That's the first thing. The second thing is when we dig a hole, fill the bottle, and puts it in the subsurface. So what that does is over time, the water leaches out the bottle and provides the moisture. The only thing you have to do, especially in small situations, because this is not recommended for large acreages. The only thing you have to do is just fill the bottle periodically, which assists you a lot. Then with the vegetable production in the bottles is you have the water bottle, you cut off the top section where the cup is, turn it upside down in the bottom section, fill that with soil. It could be actual soil, it could be mix, or it could be a combination of both. And then we have the wick. Fill the bottom section with water, sometimes nutrients in the bottom section, and it feeds the plant, provide moisture and nutrients for the plant. Hope that answers your question.
I know that you showed a picture of the wick, but we didn't see that, how the wick is used. We didn't see that.
Yeah, because I would have to get the photos of it when it was done from the inception, because how the photos that I showed were just the crops actually growing. But there are photos that we have, probably have to look for them, or just get a set when we're doing it over and send them to Michaela, and she can distribute them accordingly.
I could also share those. Also, we had Audrey sharing a link that gives a bit of an example of how the wick is there inside of the bottle. So you could also look at that link, which I just shared again. So I will take a question from the chat. One of the questions is, when there is high calcium carbonate in the water, how do you manage it to prevent clogging? And someone also indicated that they have experienced white flies under the mulch and what they can do to help eliminate that.
Okay. Periodically, when you have drip irrigation systems, you have to service them. So when you have calcium buildup, hard water buildup, what we normally do is flush the system seasonally with sulfuric acid. So the sulfuric acid will break up all the calcium and everything, the other fertilizer deposits and everything. And it doesn't harm the plants nor the soil. So seasonally, what we tend to do is do a service. But that is for like the harder irrigation lines, because most people don't service the T-tape, because the T-tape can only last for like maybe 2-3 crops, and then you probably have to replace it. So it just depends on your system. If you have the hydrocal, the hard ones that can last you for 30 years, or the T-tape that can probably last you for 2-3 years, it's up to you. But it can be serviced by just, if you have the injector, just mix some sulfuric acid in the water and run it through the system, it will flush it. And that is something that is recommended periodically. Seasonally, you turn on your system, open the end of the drip lines, flush it. Same thing with the sub main, flush it, set back the connections, and you will get rid of all the buildup. Okay? Even sometimes when you don't use it as often, you find that ants and stuff would find a home in the line and create some sort of clogging. So you have to periodically service your irrigation system.
Thanks, Brad. We'll take Rudy, after we'll take Alex. Go ahead, Rudy.
Hi, good morning to all. Is there a way I can get a copy of the recording? I missed the first 20-25 minutes of the session. Is there a way I can get a recording of the session again?
Yes, you can get the recording. It will be uploaded in Google Drive. I have sent the link. I'm sending it again in the chat so you could access it there. You could also get the recordings, the PowerPoints, the reports of the previous sessions. So once this is the session is completed, it will be uploaded. So you could just check in the chat, and I will also send it via email to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alex, you can go ahead.
Greetings from the beautiful Bahamas. I'd like to thank Dr. Bradbury Brown for his awesome and wonderful presentation. I'd also like to thank you for extending an invitation for us here in the Bahamas to actually watch it. And I find that it's truly informative and I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for joining in. We really appreciate your feedback there. Andy, you can go ahead. I'm lovely to see you from Bahamas. Andy, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning, everyone. This is Mackie Tross. I'm in Nevis. We have about 25 people tuning in, so we are thankful for the presentation. But I had a question on the tensiometer. Where could we find the tensiometer in the Caribbean? Is there a local distributor? And any information that can be shared on that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for that, Andy. Braz, if you know any suppliers, or if anybody in the chat knows any suppliers,
the short answer to that is no. But they're easily available on Amazon, and the price are a lot better. So here is where we have issues, is a lot of the equipment that we need are not easily or readily available within the region. So we're trying to rectify that. But the tensiometers are available on Amazon and they're not really expensive. Even if you don't get a tensiometer, there's a cheaper option with the side probes that you can just test the moisture. They're dual ones that you can test moisture, pH, and temperature. All of these things are essential, but they're not readily available in the region.
Thanks, and you also mentioned, there are the different ones where you could get them in collaboration with the temperature probes. And
the pH
so,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, pH. A lot of these things are actually available on Amazon, and as usual, a lot of the things we require, as you were saying, are difficult to find, but we as ourselves, as persons with our businesses, we sometimes have to take that initiative, and a lot of these things and good quality can be found on Amazon. I'm seeing Pierce Secondary. Could go ahead and take your question there, if you're still there with us.
Yes, I'm here with you. Yes, Pierce Secondary here, Antigua. One of the questions the students were asking was that they wanted to know basically what is if there's any way a workshop can be had, because they don't know how, they wanted to know how to put an entire irrigation system together, especially using getting the fertigation aspect involved. They were also commenting on the fact that the use of the black plastic mulch, because they would have done some investigation locally here at Pierce Secondary, where they observed that while we use the black plastic mulch, there's an increase in yield and so forth. But on some occasion, when it does rain and there is settlement on the mulch itself, there's an increased pest pressure coming from that. Has anybody, is there anything, are they putting it on wrong? Is there anything else? Because we're comparing it with the wood chip mulch, and they would have observed, yes, high yields, quicker to market. However, they were plagued with some fungal and other pest pressure on their fruits, namely tomatoes. So if there's anybody in the chat, in the group, that can give us some insight on any of those, and or you, Bradley, our neighbor, because he's just behind of us there. Thank you.
Okay, as to the training, CADI provides that sort of training. So if there's need for a training session, that can be arranged easily in terms of teaching the students how to install a drip irrigation system, how to build a manifold with the fertilizer injector, everything. All you have to do is just make a request for the office and we will facilitate that. With the area of the increased pests and disease, with everything, there's an advantage and a disadvantage. So one of the things we recommend is when we have seasons or incidents of high rainfall, your integrated pest management now have to become critical, where you have to manage the pest population and your disease population. That is just one of the disadvantages that come with it. But yes, it happens, but you have to manage your pests and disease situation.
Perhaps Nicola, I could come in here as well, just to add to that, if that's okay.
Johnny. Yeah, that's quite fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that these observations were actually made at the secondary school. That's so fantastic to hear, because it very much reflects the experience in different countries and under different situations. Yes, and that is one of the things in terms of even applying the mulch, some of the considerations that you have to give in terms of the soil type and what is your prevalent problem. So for example, in areas where you would have a problem with soil-borne diseases, particularly where you see some of the newly planted crops, the collar is rotting, they're actually toppling because of that, what some persons refer to some kind of damping off, or you have some things that you know that are from the soil, then actually in some instances when you apply the black mulch, you tend, because of the buildup of the humidity or not the sufficient exchange of the moisture there, you do get an enhancement in that particular type of disease here. And so the lesson learned here is that if your soil, you have seen that or you know that, then it would make sense to treat your soil before you actually apply the mulch here. So that's one of the lessons, concrete lessons here. Another thing too with the black mulch, and it relates to not only the temperature and the frequency of light as well. Some persons that would have used it, there are some grasses or sedges, mainly some grasses that you actually need heat elevation to actually increase or enhance germination. And so in some instances, even with some of the, what person called the nut sedge it's supposed to be, you would see an increased proliferation with that and other grasses, particularly because that kind of trigger, the heat trigger, already incites the germination there. And you could see some of it actually piercing through some of the plastic mulch, particularly the black one. So that is another consideration that one has to be mindful of when you're applying or selecting a mulch there. Thanks.
Excuse me, peer secondary here. Another thing that I'd like to mention is a secondary school. So we try hard not to use a lot of pesticides, etc. So maybe in one of our other sessions, we can really dive a little deeper into safer crop protection methods that could be used in a school situation or in situations where children are involved, because I know everybody's trying to get to the organic farming thing, and so it is not necessarily the easiest thing to do all the time in our environment or in our situation. But maybe you can have a session where we speak about less toxic pesticides, etc., that can be used in our special situation. Thanks a lot for the input.
Thanks for that, Pez. Before we go on, I just want to clarify, I hope that by me saying treatment, that does not automatically mean that I was referring to chemical treatment. Treating the soil, there are various ways that you do that. In fact, one of the ways that I would suggest is the issue of the solarization of the soil. Actually, I'm doing that. So it is not, when I say treatment of the soil, it's not necessarily chemical treatment that I'm referring to, just to clarify that. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chani. And as was being said, I mean, if we are doing some agricultural practices, we're planting some crop, several things will take play, your soil, your water, your pests, the finances to go into that. So it's not just looking at one thing, but also looking at the impacts of other components. And these are a lot of the things we need to be mindful of. We will take you now, George.
Thank you, Nikelia, for acknowledging me once again. I really do enjoy the discussion. There are a lot of issues which can be discussed here. Certainly the one of soil solarization and treating the soil that Chenny has mentioned. But what I wanted to also highlight, and maybe for another session or another call, perhaps Brad can maybe even speak more to it. But drainage also is as important, or even more importantly, an activity for crop production. Understandably, we have the challenges with the vagaries of climate, which forces us to do activities such as water harvesting and ensuring that we can provide the water for the crops. But equally important, we have to drain the areas sometimes, as if we have areas in which, even areas where we insert drip irrigation, these areas at certain times in the year can actually do get inundated and flooded out from excess water. That in itself will cause some runoff and even soil erosion, especially in some of the steeper slopes like in the Caribbean islands. So I just thought it was necessary to mention that drainage is important. It allows for aeration in the soil, promotes good bacterial activity. And of course, if we don't drain the soil and we put in the drip irrigation systems, then we will run the risk of having oversaturation, the proliferation of pests, the increase of fungal infections, and those sort of things, especially under plastic mulches. So I just thought it, necessary to mention, yes, we want to do the water harvesting, we want to increase our production using efficient methods of water application to the soil, but we have to be mindful that if the drainage system is not a good enough one, then we run high risks of loss in terms of productivity. Thanks, guys, but nice presentation, and I like the questions coming up from the participants as well.
Thanks very much, George. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for joining in. And of course, yes, drainage is very essential there. You have countries like Dominica that experience high rainfall, and we definitely need to take drainage into consideration. Even if certain times of the year you have these dry conditions, there are parts of the year where you have excess water and you need to manage those properly to reduce your soil erosion. And of course, this is where your planning as a farmer comes in. You know your land, you know the environment you're in, and that requires planning. Where do you put your drainage? How much drainage? As you would have seen in some of the pictures Brad's put in, you do have the drainage systems between the beds there. And of course, this is something you have to consider. Brad's, if you want to jump in there, or Chini, if you want to jump in to add anything on those comments, go ahead.
Yeah, Nicola, I could jump in there, but of course, because Brad starts with a B, I will allow him to go first. I come out.
Nice one, Johnny. But if persons can remember, the first part of the presentation was you have to know your terrain and you have to know your soil type. Once you know that, then you can implement your interventions that you need to prevent a lot of these issues. Like you're on a slope, you cannot plow the land and bank the land in a certain direction, because you're just creating a situation for environmental issues in terms of landslides and flooding. If you know your soil is high in clay and the water content is high, some things just not for you. So if you know you're going to have flooding, you don't want to put down plastic mulch and all of these things. This is just systems specific for certain environmental conditions. Okay, Johnny?
Yeah, no problem, Brad. One of the things I wanted to just, again, I do, and it's a personal peeve, and I do agree with you totally, George, on the issue of drainage there. I'm actually very concerned that
inside, you're putting your bags on the shelves.
Right, sorry. I have a concern that a lot of the emphasis is on rain harvesting, particularly as it's presented as a management system. I would argue the point that the issue of getting the supply of water is not as critical as what do you do with it here and how do you use it efficiently. I mean, the issue of putting in infrastructure, designing system to collect the water, that is just a very minute part of water management. What I find the gap is how do people effectively distribute, use, account, use that for making the decision. That for me is where the meaningful aspect comes in, even if you're looking at just one aspect of water management, which is the sourcing and the application for crop productivity. So colleagues, I know that everywhere you turn, you've seen some rain harvesting, you've seen a pond, you've seen a roof system, etc. And it sounds nice, everybody. If you ask them, rain harvesting, harvesting. But I would very much like if the attention in terms of a more holistic thing down the line, that now you have the food in front of you, how do you eat it properly and what use can you make of that resource or that food in your body? I think that is the most critical question as we go forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. That's a good brain teaser there to keep us thinking beyond the just, getting the water, irrigating. What do we do thereafter? Thanks for that. Jennifer, we'll take you. If you're speaking, by any chance, you're on mute. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I want to go back to Sharon. She asked about the tree crop irrigation or the tree irrigation with the plastic bottle. I want to emphasize on this. Explain to her that the place where she would put the bottles and most of the mulch would be on the drip line, which is that circle that is within 6 inches of where the branches extend out the fullest. I've seen many people throw buckets and buckets of water around the trunk of the tree. But at that point, there are no water absorbing roots. The water absorbing roots are around that circle that if you stood under the tree, you would not get wet, but that edge where the rain would drip off and wet. And it's called the drip line. The drip line. And so where she, in the case of a tree, she would probably need 2 or 3 bottles because she wouldn't want to have a bottle just sitting on one side of that tree, but maybe she could divide that circle into 3 and she would not be putting a bottle inside anywhere near to the trunk because she would actually be, in some cases like avocado, creating a moist environment around what is called the trunk, the crown of the root, and avocado crown roots are very famous for picking up diseases, as are citrus, fungal diseases. So it's the drip line, that circle of where the tree leaves, branches extend the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody wants to add any comments to Jennifer's? Are you there with us, Brad, Johnny?
Yeah, I 100% agree. So basically, as I said previously, when you're installing whether the bottle system, the drip irrigation system for trees, periodically you have to extend the location of the moisture so that it can cater for the roots that actually absorb the moisture and the nutrients, because they're not by the trunk anymore or straight down from where the tree is.
Right. Even if the plants don't move like we do, but the roots are growing outwards and downwards, and therefore you need to adjust accordingly with the growth of the crop, particularly those tree crops that will be there for several years. Claudette, we will take your question.
Hi, my name is Claudette, and I'm calling from Cincinnati, Grenada. What I want to know, right? The land here is basically slightly sloped and really sloped in a lot of places. But we want to do irrigation. How do we go about doing irrigation in lands that is sloped?
Well, firstly, one of the things that I would recommend off the bat is run your banks on them across the slope, not down the slope. So you would have the banks on them running. So if the slope is east and west, you would make the banks on them run north and south, and vice versa. Plus, also doing that, you build contours that would cater for excessive rainfall, that you wouldn't have a lot of mudslides and stuff like that. Then another consideration you have to take on board is, once you irrigate it up the slope, creates some issues whereby you have to pump the water up the slope and then back down the slope. So your topography has a lot to do with how you design your irrigation system and how you provide the water. Just like what Chani was saying, you have the water, but it's how to use it effectively for maximizing crop production.
Okay, thanks, Raz.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So we'll start wrapping up. I'm seeing we have 4 hands up, so we'll take these 4 questions and just about 2 others from the chat. So Craig, you can go ahead.
No, something else.
Are you there with us, Craig?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Nicalia, Craig Thomas, Antigua and Barbuda, National Specialist for the ECA office here. It's just more of a comment. Just want to commend Brad for such a timely presentation. For persons who have logged on from Antigua know that ECA and CARDI would have done greater number of work when it comes to irrigation interventions in Antigua and Barbuda. And we would have seen, especially post-COVID, a number of farmers implementing irrigation system basically to help to complement our food security issues that we have in Antigua. We know Antigua and Barbuda is dry, but we would have seen the success stories with small, simple irrigation systems, some without fertile irrigation system, some with irrigation system. So the teacher from peers who basically requested the support, we are always readily available to share that knowledge with them so that we can continue to expand the knowledge for the importance of irrigation system, soil and water conservation. So again, thanks to Brad for such a timely presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Craig. And that is the ECA rep from Antigua. So persons from Antigua who require any further support, further information, could always reach out to Craig and the ECA office in Antigua. We will take you again, Sharon.
Hi, pleasant good morning. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, can I go ahead?
Yes, you can go ahead, no problem.
All right. And people were talking about the Wicca plan, about the Wicca method. This is my Wicca plan. As you can see, the Wicca is underneath the plant. Now, I did the bottle, and I have been doing it for a while. And because I found that it works so well, I incorporated using ordinary pots with bottles. And so I did the same thing. And so I for all my house plants, everything Wicca, right? So this is the Wicca. Your plant is on top, it's in the container, and you must have a hole to allow the escape of excess water. So that's my contribution for now.
Thank you so much for that view of the Wicca system and using the pots, Cheryl. Greatly appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, we will take the St. Kitts or the Nevis office. Go ahead. You're on mute. Try unmuting. Still muted. Okay, you can go ahead now.
All right. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
St. Kitts Nevis, Extension Officer, Agriculture Department. Just shedding a little light on the mulching here. We here normally use the white and black mulching. We don't really specialize in the all black mulching because of the heat. We had better yield and better work done with the white and black in terms of moisture being kept, producing the seedlings and fresh seedlings based on using the black one. It just all comes down to the amount of heat that's generated from both. So the white one is what we normally push out from the department in terms of sales and encourage farmers to use. We don't really use the black one. Yeah, technically that's it for us here.
Okay, thank you for your experience there in St. Kitts. And, you know, as with everything, even if the research might say something, even if somebody in another country might have a different experience, situations everywhere are different. And it is always good to do your own experiment and see what works best for you. So this is one of the key things, even in, you know, agriculture production, always doing your little research over time, and record keeping your records become very important there to know what works best, when it works best, and you can get an idea of what is impacting it. Because, you know, even if you use the black or the white, sometimes there is probably a different practice that you use that influences, you know, how well that output you get out of it. So again, you know, observing your farm, observing what is done, taking note of the various practices that you implement on your farm, and not just say, okay, research says that and it should work like that for me. No, it doesn't work like that. And we will take you, Scott. You can go ahead with your question. So that will be our last question then.
Good morning, everyone. Great seeing you, Nikelia. Chani, big up yourself. Winston Scott here out of Jamaica. Greetings to everyone, to one and all. It's a pleasure being on a platform to hear all or most of the accents of the Caribbean. I am having fun. All right, so my, not necessarily a question, but I want to touch on the topic of the water harvesting that Chani spoke on. And it's something that is very, sit well with me in terms of there's an intriguing part of it that I really need to get some understanding of. And what is bothering me about water harvesting is that it's environmentally friendly, yes, low cost, true, but it's a system that works when you have rainfall, because rain would be the source of water, right? when you have rainfall, you don't necessarily need irrigation. However, yes, you store the water for when it's not raining. However, Shani talk about effective use of water. Now you're going to channel that resource that you have. What if we have a drought situation for an extended period that exhausts your water supply? What would happen then? Because you have no rain, you wouldn't have any water to harvest, therefore you don't have any water to distribute to your crops. And obviously, we cannot catch all the rain that falls during the rainy season. Your storage capacity will be limited somewhat. So that's one of the things that I'm considering. I'm thinking about it, water harvesting. It's good, it works. You can catch the water that falls off from a shed or a catchment area or a watershed area. But what happens if you have an extended period of drought that deplete your water resource and you have crops in the ground depending on this water? So that's one of the things. I don't know. It's just an intriguing part of it that does sit well with me. So I'd like if somebody could, mention something about it, or am I the only one thinking along that line? I hope I said that well enough. I explained myself clearly. Over to you, Nikele.
Okay, thanks for that intriguing thought there. And of course, with the rainwater harvesting, the key thing there is also storing that water during the rainfall season so that that is available during the dry season. And in thinking of that, one of the key things is, again, it might not necessarily just be about the irrigation, but that's where, calculations have to come in. The size of land that you're farming, the type of crop that you're farming, which will bring in the crop water requirement. And that now you use all these parameters to do your calculations to give you a general idea that, okay, if I get a drought for say 4 months, I will need that capacity of storage. So this is where now, outside of just, okay, I need water, but that is where you need the calculations coming in and the parameters to do those calculations. So you need to be aware of these things to know how much I need to store so that I can have that amount of water for this particular crop over a certain acreage over a period of time. If you want to weigh in a bit more details there, Brad and Chani, go ahead.
Yeah, but in addition to what you're saying is, we don't have no control over when rain comes in. What we try to do is harvest as much water as possible so that in periods of drought, you have an alternative system. Now, when you're realizing that it's going to be a prolonged drought, here is where the decisions become critical in terms of what crops you need to irrigate, the amounts of water that you need to irrigate to maintain the crops. And also knowing your crop water requirements at the different stages so that you can conserve early in the crop growth, just apply enough water to maintain when the crop, whether it's fruit trees, vegetables, whatever, the critical times when you need to irrigate to maintain food production, whatever. It's sometimes just decision. If no rain coming, there's nothing none of us can do. Just pray that rain comes. But at least we have a system in place where we harvest the water when it's available and utilize it in drought periods. If we have prolonged, well, in Antigua, we don't have a choice. We have to do as much rainwater harvesting because we almost know that by the middle of December till about the middle of May, rainfall is going to be low. So what farmers try to do is harvest as much water. As a matter of fact, in Antigua right now, 90% of the water that is being distributed through the domestic system and the farming system is our water. We just don't have a choice.
Yeah, I could come in there.
Go ahead, Chani.
Brad, were you completed? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Winston, that's a fantastic question here. And that is why I think the point about looking at water management from a more broader perspective is very important. So there are several things, and I think that there are several countries that you can look at as a case study, particularly Israel. Israel essentially had a 7-year drought, more than that actually, 7-year drought. But when you travel to Israel, you're actually seeing that they were allocating water to nature. Right, and you're seeing it actually greener than in some of the Caribbean countries when there was a dry period here. So that's one of the things I wanted to keep your mind on. Also the issue of water harvesting, and that is the misnomer as well. When people think of harvesting water, they're thinking of rainwater harvesting. However, if you look at the technology now, there's harvesting water from your relative humidity, the moisture in the air, which is there, which is present there, which is another source of water. There are technologies doing that in disaster-prone places that, again, we could actually look at. Right now, there's a company right here in Trinidad that is actually selling water systems for in-house use where you extract the water from the humidity in the air. That is also a source of water harvesting here. To the largest extent as well, even some persons, I wouldn't necessarily agree with it on the technical fine points of it, but the issue of translating seawater into usable water, some people assume that as water harvesting as well. I think it's more water processing, but persons will also put that on the harvesting here. The clear issue is that, like anything else, it's a simple issue of your demand and your supply here. And there's only so much that you could do. Your principal purpose as somebody managing the water is to see what is the best use that you can make out of it. Look at your sources, where you're getting it, what sources you could tap on. If you're only going to rely on rainwater in certain places here, one, it is not just the issue of whether there's enough rain there. The other issue, do you have a large enough containment system to allow you to trap enough so that it goes through your growing season, becomes another challenging question here to battle out. But the end point for me is this here. If we continue thinking that rainwater and the issue of relying too heavily, like you said, that is the sense of your question, as a fix-all or particular way that can mitigate or address some of the challenges that we have, I don't think that we are there on the ball to actually do that. We are not poised to do that unless we open our vantage view a little further to consider, one, the better use, more efficient use, meaning that because of the water cycle, you look at the issue of how could you maximize the life of the water on your farm. So you actually design it so that it stays on your farm for the longest. That is another thing that we did not explicitly say, but the retention of water on your farm is another thing that you as a farmer or you as a person to try to see how it stays there as long as possible before it goes back into the cycle in terms of being evaporated from that here. So Winston, very good point. Participants, just be aware that rain is not the only source of water. And there are also things like the seawater and also the relative humidity. And also you will come to situations where even with all of that, there may be limitations that you could only do your best to adapt to. So I just wanted to leave that with the participants as we go forward dealing with that important issue. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Thanks, Jenny. We will take the final question from you, Conrad. And you could go ahead. And while we take that question, I'll be sending a poll on your screen that persons you could answer in the meantime. Thanks. Go ahead, Conrad.
Thank you. I'm Conrad Kelly with FAO as a National Project Coordinator. And right now, actually, we are looking at installing solar-powered drip irrigation systems on a number of farms, like in Antigua and Barbados, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, Jamaica. And the focus there is to add to what presently exists to address a need. And so water harvesting is considered an important pattern. The farmers, as we assess the farmers, we realize that there is water, but not adequate amount of water. So finding ways of harvesting that water and storing it and utilizing when it's needed is a very important part. But we are emphasizing, like Cheney says and Bradbury said, on the water use, water management or water efficiency. So we not want to just give them the systems, we also want them to manage the use of the water efficiently. And it goes beyond that, as being said, the choice of crops that are coming on to very dry period, where you know you're going to have extended dry period, sometimes you know that, then you can plan. So I would like to suggest that let's not sort of talk down too much on the water harvesting of rainwater harvesting, but to see it as an addition to all the other water supplies that are possible in our environment. And clearly, this focus on rainwater harvesting is really coming out of an identified need in these very dry conditions in which we are farming. I just wanted to add that and underscore the, not to belittle rainwater harvesting, but to see it as an additional source, if managed properly, could in fact extend the time when we have water available for irrigating our crops. Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you, Conrad, and I do agree with that. Of course, one thing on its own will not work. We have to look at, incorporating other aspects like the, the water harvesting, your mulching, your drip irrigation, and the various actions on the farm there as well. Brads, if you want to weigh in, Jenny, and then I'll just take the last two questions from the chat so we could close off.
Yeah,
I'm good for now. I agree.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to come in there, colleagues. Thank you very much for the attention here and also sharing what you all have been doing. It is very tremendous. It's very nice to see people actually, the lady that I think it was Sharon actually demonstrated and showed what she is doing here. That is what we envision for the forum. I want to also leave the participants with that the issue when we particularly share technologies and perspectives, the issue is never an issue of belittling. The issue is more of being more inclusive of some things so that we have a more inclusive approach and we are more pragmatic in terms of how we are thinking of things. I think all of us could appreciate that all approaches and technologies, they do have the advantages and the disadvantage, but based upon that, you don't just rule them out. And so it's an issue of, while we look at this, we cannot dispute the issue of sources like rainwater and other sources like that. The issue too is to balance it off, like Mr. Conrad said, with the most efficient use of that as well. And that would be the same for anywhere where you get your water from. The issue remains whether you have too much or too little water. The issue always remains the issue of management of water there. And so even if you don't have to harvest water, management of water is still there, meaning that if you have excess water, even if you don't have excess water, you still have to manage it. So that is one of the consistent or constant thing when you look at the issue of the resource of water there. Obviously recognizing that in our context, rainwater and other sources of water are very important for our use. Thanks.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Brad. And we just have 2 minutes to wrap up. So I would like to extend special thanks to you, the participants, for being here today and continuing taking part in our sessions. And I would just like to share with you, coming up next is part 3 of the forum, which is scheduled for October 12th, and that is 10 a.m. Caribbean time, Guyana, Dominica, Suriname, that would be 11 a.m. Belize, I believe that would be 8 a.m. and Jamaica is 9 a.m. I know some persons sometimes get a bit mixed up with the timing because when you get the link, it says 10 a.m., but that is 10 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time. And so you would have to convert that for your region. So I would like to extend special thanks to you, Brads, for such an informative session, sharing all your experiences there, some of the challenges, what has worked, what hasn't worked. And to you, the participants, special thanks again for joining in. Thanks, Jenny, for weighing in on some of the other aspects there. And this other session will be based on a project that ICA is currently implementing in 4 of the Caribbean countries of Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, and Tobago. And one of the key areas is looking at the ecosystem-based adaptation. And one of the key aspects is the use of the vetiver grass. I know a lot of you will be aware of the vetiver grass, how we use that for reducing sedimentation, soil erosion, and also how do we develop some green businesses. We had some lovely products from Antigua and the other islands, and we will be sharing those in the next session. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining in. We wish everyone a pleasant day ahead.
Same here. Nice.